Hello and welcome. I am your host, JP John Paz, for the two-man power trip of wrestling. Of course, joining me is the former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest minds and bookers ever in the history of the business, the Games Master, the Taskmaster, the Devil himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
Great, JP. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. Can't complain in this crazy world that just keeps getting crazier.
Yeah, it certainly does, doesn't it?
Now, recently, and it's funny because obviously we're going back 25 years here, but recently it keeps coming out about this interesting WCW incident between Bill Goldberg, excuse me, and Steven Regal, Lord Steven Regal. It just keeps coming back up. Regal has his side of it. Goldberg has his side of it. You always said you're just the facts, no bullshit. You're not going to play the political game. So February 9th, 1998, Goldberg versus Regal on Nitro from El Paso, Texas. What the heck happened in this match? Because Regal has a completely different story out there.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. I told an agent something, and I'm not going to tell you who the agent was. I'm not going to put Regal in a position to get squashed. Bill now has gone through everybody like shit through a goose, right?
Yep.
It's a learning time. It's time to learn a little. Let's change the match somewhat. On this one, I think that there was some real bad miscommunication back in the dressing room. I take the blame on myself for not being there. It's hard when you have a person like Regal and he's in with Bill and you're going to ask him to teach him because Regal was so great without explaining it to Bill. Bill didn't understand. How long had he been in the business? 6 months?
Basically, yeah, if you look at it, yeah.
He was a neophyte. He had no idea. We had given him the match just before. Now it's time to learn because you're not going to be able to do that with Hogan, right? Nash. You're going to have to start to learn to do some stuff. It was a miscommunication. I think they both should sit down and talk sometime because they're both right. Bill thought he should have done what he was doing, and it wasn't the time. It was time for him to take another step in the learning process. And Regal did nothing out of the way because there was one. I had seen the match just recently. There was one thing that Bill looked very clumsy on, right? And
Yeah.
it was like in a side headlock or something by Regal. And Regal would have talked him into it and put him in the position, but Bill kind of fell out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
He was in there to learn. So that's my take.
How come nobody will reveal who the agent is? Regal won't reveal it. I don't think Goldberg did. How come nobody will reveal who the agent of the match was?
Because I think we all understand if the guy doesn't come through, means one or two things. He's no longer with us, or he doesn't want to take the heat. And there's no heat, it was just a misunderstanding. But Bill made such a big thing of it. Shit, we've all had, even Ric Flair's had shitty matches.
Where he made a big thing of it. He even put in his book about it. He was still pissed about it and said that Regal didn't take care of him, took some liberties with him. Do you think that Regal took some liberties?
No, that's the European work, that uppercut. That's, hey, it's time to, when I wrote it down, I probably wrote it down a month too soon. I should have put Bobby Eaton in there with him, or somebody to teach him a little bit more before he got to Regal, because Regal was a physical worker. He wasn't taking liberties. Believe me, Bill's a tough guy. Regal's a tough guy. It would have ended up being ugly. So, no.
So it was because Regal says he was told to have a competitive match. So even you're saying it was supposed to be somewhat of a competitive match.
It was supposed to be like, I heard I've heard people say 60-40. I would say maybe 65-35. But Regal had to get his 35 or 40 in. If someone tells me 35, I'm getting 45 in.
But do you think that that was smart of you guys at that point with Goldberg to do that, or did you think like it's not going to make him look great on TV?
Well, we picked, well, how many times, as big a pop as he got, could he keep doing that before he could work with Hogan, Nash, Hall, name a bunch of other guys? You know what I mean? He couldn't keep on just smashing guys. He had to learn to at least register. You know, that's what I had him doing, not selling, but he had to start registering a little more. But, you know, it made a lasting impression.
It actually doesn't end up hurting Goldberg, but why do you think that he thinks it does end up hurting him? You know what I mean? Like people didn't kind of read too much into it. I don't think the fans
No,
wise.
no, I think that a lot of guys ripped him. That's what I think.
What did they say to him?
Oh, guys know how to. When Bill was like I said, 6 months, guys can say snide shit, and there's also other guys that like to stir the pot. So, you know, I think Bill was very sensitive at the time. You know, he was getting a major push, and he knew he didn't know that much.
Do you think that exposed him there by
No,
Regal doing that?
no, absolutely not.
Why not?
Because Tyson didn't knock everybody out, right?
True, true.
Okay. And sometimes Tyson had to go a few rounds before he knocked the guy out. And sometimes the guy would hit Tyson and get him off his ass. Not on his ass, but off his heels, you know. So it's time to show a little bit of vulnerability.
Do you think that if you really look at it, that that's what the fans wanted too from Goldberg to see a little bit of that? Did they want to see a little bit of a chink in the armor?
I don't think they want to see a chink in the armor, but they want to see the armor at least be dented. You know, and Regal, hey, Regal had a great run. Regal was looked upon as a very good performer and a top guy. It wasn't like he was going through, you know, somebody that didn't mean anything.
I got to mention this because I mean it's out there. He was not necessarily clean and sober during these years in WCW, meaning Regal. Was he clean and sober during this match?
Yeah.
What do you think that of the people that were saying that he may not have been. Like, is that just stirring the pot? Is there some truth behind that he wasn't really with it during this era in WCW? Because I think even self-admittedly he would say that he wasn't in the best shape of his life at this point.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too. But on that night, I think he was fine.
Was there issues with him as far as not being clean at that point? Like as far as him being out of control in WCW?
No, not that. No.
What did you think about being able to trust Regal with Goldberg
Oh,
in
I
this
could
match?
trust Regal with my life.
But when you look at it, Goldberg necessarily doesn't. Is that your fault, the agent's fault, Regal's fault? Like, how come he is not smarter to the business even after the match? You know what I mean? How come he's not like smartened up a little bit to it?
Because he had been Superman and somebody had exposed a little kryptonite on him and he didn't know how to take it. It didn't hurt his career at all, did it?
I don't think so. No, he
No.
for some reason thinks it did a little, but I don't think it did
How?
at all.
How? How? How?
I don't know. He just seems bitter about it. That a guy tried to take liberties with him.
I don't know how he thinks he tried to take liberties. I don't.
You,
Liberties to me is when someone smacks you around and they call it a working punch.
there's a couple times in the match where he slaps him, but Regal always did that. You know that open palm strike, whatever. He
Yeah.
was he kind of made point about that, but that was part of his offense.
And the European uppercut.
Yep.
I mean, it's a different style. That's what made WCW so fascinating. I
And
mean, I just watched the fight. Who was the super middleweight that was 41-0 from Wales? Do you remember? He had an Italian name, even though he was from Wales. He's one of the greatest super heavyweights, not super heavyweights, super middleweights of all times. Well, he was knocking people out like Goldberg. He retired 41-0, but he got knocked down a couple of times in different fights. Hey, it makes it a little bit more exciting sometimes. It breaks the pattern. Remember, I used to talk about patterns.
yep.
Yeah.
Also, there was a few kicks there, but Regal likes to say they look worse than what they really are to the fan. Like me watching it, I'm like, oh, those look like stiff kicks, but they're probably not, right? I mean, in essence, he's probably pulling them.
He didn't kick him any harder than anybody else did. Regal was a tremendous performer. All those English and Irish guys are. They're fabulous. They know how to work.
The agent never comes forward, right? So we don't know who that is in the match. But Bischoff was furious backstage. Why is he furious? And how come, Regal's getting the brunt of it and not the agent, or not even maybe you, as far as Bischoff being pissed?
You'd have to ask Eric. I mean, maybe Eric didn't understand at that moment about he had to make another step. Goldberg. He had to show a little vulnerability.
Why was he so pissed? Did he not know like what was scheduled? Like did Bischoff not
Did
know it was
you,
supposed to be a competitive match?
nobody went over that with Eric. I don't think. You
Shouldn't
know,
you? Or no?
at that period, uh, maybe I should have. Looking back, hindsight, maybe I should have. But Bill, I created Bill, and I thought it was time for the bolts to be tightened in the neck and the Frankenstein monster. Hey, You see Frankenstein? He's afraid of fire, ain't he?
Hmm.
You got to have a vulnerability. Either that or he was going to eventually turn heel. And I'll tell you what something that somebody told me, and I didn't believe it. You might have been the one that told me. When Nash beat him, even though I hated that finish, there were people in the front row jumping up from joy.
Huge pop. Yeah.
So maybe it was like when, you know how I always relate things to boxing, right?
Hmm.
It was when Buster Douglas, who was what, 70 to 1 odds,
Oh, maybe even worse. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah.
and he beat the shit out of Tyson,
Yep.
people popped.
Big time.
Yeah.
It's funny going to WrestleMania 9 when Hogan beats Yokozuna after Yokozuna beats Brett. Brett and everybody were complaining that Hogan won. That shouldn't happen. That was bullshit. The crowd goes nuts. So, I
Yeah.
mean, the crowd loved it. So sometimes you got to go by the crowd sometimes.
You got to go with what the people want. Like somebody mentioned to me, uh, do you think LA Knight can beat Roman Reigns?
He better not.
Let me ask you this. Real simple. There's wrestling, right?
Hmm.
And then there's the wrestling business. Hasn't there been a huge merger?
Yes.
When the merger came and the WWE was doing so good, coming off the WrestleMania, who was champion?
Roman Reigns.
Now you're going to Saudi Arabia. There's a little bit of turmoil in the company right now, again, isn't there, with Vince?
So they say with Ari and Vince and
Yeah.
do they really want Triple H to be head of creative? They really do, not Vince, but yeah,
Okay. Would you pull the trigger now?
not a
And then
chance.
next week, and then 2 weeks, the ratings be down?
Nope.
And I love LA Knight, but you don't think heads would roll if they went down the next week?
Yep. Big time. Too
And
risky. Too risky.
and the other thing why it's risky is the political climate right now. That match is coming from the Middle East.
Right.
You don't know how many uh, Jewish Americans are going to turn that TV off.
Hey, I think Reigns. I'm loving this Bruno Sammartino rumor that they're going to try to have him go towards that record, which is 5 years away, by the way. So I think it's far off. But I
Yeah,
love that that's a rumor out there, and I love that people are getting mad about it.
yeah. I don't think he'll do that. I think he's going to. What does he have to? He has to get to win WrestleMania 40 to beat Hogan's streak.
Yes. Yes.
That's what they're going to do.
And it's funny because they say Backlund has a longer streak than Hogan, but not technically. So I'm a huge fan, and I would love talking about the titles. So technically, Backlund's title run is two different runs because he lost to Inoki in Japan and then then got it, got it gifted back to him.
Right.
So technically, Backlund's title run is 4 days shorter than Hogan. So Reigns could technically pass Backlund on his way to WrestleMania 40, win WrestleMania 40, and then pass Hogan, and then he'd only have Bruno's two title runs ahead of him, which would be nuts.
No, he wouldn't do. He ain't going that far, brother. He'll be in Hollywood with,
Oh yeah, yeah.
with Rock directing him.
But I love that that's a rumor out there because Bruno's title run was 8 years. So technically,
Yeah.
he would need 4.5 more years after
This is how.
WrestleMania.
This is how crazy we all get about wrestling.
Yeah.
Because that came to me the other night. I said, wasn't Bruno 7 years? Now you tell me it's 8.5. God.
Yeah, I think it was eight. I think because it was 2,100. 35 days, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me do the math. 2135. Oh no, maybe it is 7. Oh, whoops. Let me do the math here. Yeah, it is. It is closer to 7, but it's still. He's still got 4 years to go. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, that's a long ass time.
That ain't happening, brother. He'll be in Hollywood, and The Rock will be directing him.
If you look at it, like to even think about as somebody in this day and age in 2023, getting close to that is nuts.
Yeah, it really is. You know, it's funny.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 2,803 days for Bruno. So it is over 7.5 years as champion. Okay. 2,803.
Okay. Here's what's funny. You know, when people talk about uh, Mount Rushmore, it's their era. Do you know who Jim Lundis is?
Yeah. One of the greatest draws of all time, technically speaking.
It the greatest draw of all time. Are you aware of that?
Oh, I've looked at some of the numbers there. It's insane, especially during the time period he did it.
It was the Depression.
Yeah.
He would come to Boston. They'd either go to Fenway Park or Braves. You know, the Braves were in Boston at the time. They'd either go to Braves Field or Fenway Park. 35,000 people.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Huge draw. Huge
So
draw.
Antonio Rocca brought wrestling back on TV, right?
Yep.
Gorgeous George.
Huge legend. Yep.
Yeah. So everything is the era you were raised in. The music. Are you a music buff?
Oh, yeah.
I was on YouTube last night, and I'm caught on uh, the start of the Beatles, right? And all the music they produced. Some people think it's the greatest music ever created. I would say in 10 years, a lot of people won't know who the Beatles are. I just saw a thing on, is it Belinda Carlisle? That's the country and western singer. She put a documentary on Tanya Tucker. Did you ever hear of her?
No. Mm-mm.
Tanya Tucker was a country and western star at 13. They hid how young she was because she did Delta Dawn. You know the song Delta Dawn? Everybody does. Delta Dawn. You
Sounds
know,
really familiar. Yeah.
yeah, it's a huge hit on. Uh, and Brenda Carlisle did it. Nobody knew who Tanya Tucker was. She used to. You know who Glenn Campbell was?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Glenn Campbell and her were an item. He was
Oh,
44. He was 44. She was 22. They were snorting cocaine from Maine to Oregon. You know,
yeah.
I mean, she was in the tabloids every day. Nobody knows who she is. So, and she's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. So, we're all creatures of our era. That's why you see, I'm watching, I'm watching that thing on the Beatles, right? And this guy's 80 years old with real long hair and ponytails. You know, they haven't left the 60s. It's their era.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Just going back to the Goldberg Regal thing, just to put a cap on that. The match itself isn't that good. It's clunky. It's awkward. Do you blame Regal? Do you blame Goldberg? Do you blame both of them? Do you blame the miscommunication with the agent? Like, because if you look at it, the match
No, I
itself
don't
is
blame the
just not good.
miscommunication on the agent. He said he wanted, if it was delivered right, 65-35.
Okay.
It was one of those things that Bill wasn't prepared for that match. We should have, my mistake. I should have put Bobby Eaton in there for a week. Bobby could have maneuvered him around. Regal, I believe, thought he could probably, Bill could probably have done more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, does Regal think Goldberg is more advanced than he is at that point?
I think so. I think so.
Because it's one of those things where he's not really leading him around. You know, like Flair will literally, like if you watch his early matches against Sting, like they were talking about, Flair, like he literally will lead him around. Regal's not leading him around at all.
When we get through with this, I got to go back to something. Did you see that promo with Sting and Flair?
Yeah, for AEW, yeah.
And Christian gave woo, woo. That was a little stiff, huh?
Yeah. Flair's face, I was watching, Flair's face
Yeah,
is like priceless during that,
yeah,
that promo.
yeah.
He's
You,
just like, whoa.
you don't think they'll put him in there as a six man, do you?
I was just mentioning that to my buddy because I was like, I know they're teasing obviously Edge, Adam Copeland's gonna be in the match, but they mentioned Flair as a possible um participant. You think he's gonna wrestle again?
I don't know, but why would he bury Flair that bad when you had Sting there, who's, retiring?
I don't know. I feel like he's gonna somehow he's itching. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah,
gonna want to be in it.
yeah,
Kind of dangerous, I think, but that would be pretty interesting.
yeah.
That was shocking that he was on. Do you think they should have promoted that?
No.
Oh, you like it being a surprise?
Yeah, and with all these things that Rick got going from right now, something made it come up, and he had maybe would have missed the show. You know what I mean?
Yep. I hope it just leads to ratings next week. You know what I mean? If hey, Flair's going to be on, or hey, Flair was on last week, let's watch this week to check out what Flair's got to say.
Yeah. I don't think it will, but who knows?
Going back to Goldberg Regal though, I feel like Flair would have kind of led Goldberg around in the match. Regal maybe not that type of wrestler, or maybe he just wasn't prepared to do that in this match because he didn't realize that Goldberg was so green.
Regal was an offensive wrestler.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Rick was a defensive wrestler.
Are you gonna take the blame, or the agent? Is the agent
Oh,
finally
I'll
going to
take
come
the
forward and
blame.
take?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to take the blame. You said.
Yeah.
All right. So just a couple random WCW questions that came in for you. Who was on the WCW booking committee in 1994?
Flair, Cornette.
No, not 94. Cornette wasn't there in 94.
Oh, that was the first one. The booking committee?
Yep.
Wasn't Ole running that? 94?
94, you're there, and Hogan's on his way in, so I think Ole is out.
I'm not sure who was running it then, but somebody was running it.
Bischoff brings you in, right, to help out booking.
No, he brings me in for ideas. I don't take over until Hulk gets there.
So would the committee be maybe you, Dusty, Flair, maybe? Just as far as like
No,
who's helping with the booking in '94 before
I
Hogan?
think I think Dusty was the booker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
When Hogan gets there, that's literally that's the starting point. You're the booker when Hogan gets there.
Not immediately when we went on the first trip to overseas. Hogan came up to me.
What do you
Yeah.
say?
He said, "Can you do this for us?" I said, "Yeah."
Now, not Bischoff, but Hogan is asking you to be the booker.
Hogan and Bischoff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But obviously, Hogan's kind of pushing it, though.
Right.
Why do you think that is? He trusts you more than he trusts the other
Well,
guys?
he grew up watching me. He used to come to Tampa Armory every Tuesday night.
Big thing with him is trust, though. You think that maybe he trusted you also more than Dusty and Rick?
Yeah, and I never asked him for a job.
And you thought that obviously he took that in the right way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
guy's not asking for anything. He doesn't want anything, but I think he would be good as the booker.
yeah. And I had booked a few places before that pretty successfully.
Is that something that scares you a little bit when you think about it? It's like, okay, the head, like the guy that we just brought in, the head of the company, Bischoff, he's been there for about a year or so. But I mean, we just bring in a big star wrestler like Hogan, and he's kind of calling the shots. Did that scare you at all?
No, he was Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? Again, let's go back to eras. Was there anybody ever bigger than Hulk?
No, never.
There it is.
Are you okay with a wrestler calling the shots, though? You know what I mean? Are you okay with that?
He wasn't calling the shots. He went to talk to. They both talked to me, and but I think he felt comfortable with me.
Do you think that comfortability was one of the things that was because he watched you, or because he saw how you booked and was like, "Man, this guy knows."
Yeah, he saw how I booked. I mean, just because he watched me, he wasn't going to give it to me. No.
He liked your track record, if you will.
Yeah,
When you start to book and stuff, who's it like under you as far as creative and booking committee?
I brought in Arn to help me. Arn was a big help. Yeah,
What
I
about Mike
did it
Graham?
for my, he came in later, but I did it by myself for a long time before Arn came. Yeah.
Do you literally put it in a book in a notebook and like do it that way, or is it all in your head?
I kind of you mean when I was doing it,
Yeah. Yep.
I would sit down in a quiet place, mostly on the beach, and look up in the sky and like watch a movie and say, okay, how, where is this movie going, and who are the monsters, and who's the Justice League, and who's the League of Monsters, and that's how I kind of put it together.
Would you be partaking in any extracurricular activity when you would do booking, or no?
Oh, sometimes, yeah, 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 yeah. Sometimes you'd have to, you know. I mean, you know, as
So sometimes you have to partake in a little extracurricular
Well,
activities when you're booking.
and here's the other thing too. Uh, the thing that you know why I believe that there were so many overdoses during the 90s.
No, why? Too much extracurricular activity?
No, do you know that we were when we were had the drug thing, the
Hmm.
drug test? We were on the NBA drug test where you could smoke pot. Do you remember uh, Parrish?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Robert Parrish?
No, what was his? He was the chief, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The Chief Robert Parrish. Yeah.
You remember he got busted with all that pot sent to him?
Yeah. That's why he's the chief?
Yeah, because he smoked so much.
Wow, I didn't even realize that. Okay. I thought
Yeah,
because he's like the leader, you know what I mean?
yeah,
The leader of the
yeah.
team. Oh,
But everybody in the NBA, you could smoke. But do you remember when they went out on strike?
yep.
They took that away from them. I had up until that time, I had seen pills very rarely. So it it made a lot more sense, especially now. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like people people look at people that, and I don't smoke anymore. So uh, people now look at people and say, uh, what is going on? Uh, how is this ever illegal? It's going to be. I I think they're going to make it a federal deal. It's still. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Another random question for you. Thoughts on Rick Rude winning the WCW World title at Fall Brawl 1993? Really, I guess the NWA World title, aka International title. But what were your thoughts on Rick Rude becoming world champion?
I love Rick Rude. Loved him. Loved him. He was at my birthday party one time, and that's when I was living in Daytona. And Percy, was his manager. Percy dabbed him with some acid, and they had to drive 60 miles back to Tampa.
Oh
But
my God.
I love Rude. He was a great performer.
When you look at him as world champion, buying it easily. I mean, definitely world
Easily,
champion.
easily, easily.
What about as far as Flair and him are concerned? Did those two get along at that point? Because I mean, he's beating Flair for the world title, so he's kind of becoming the top dog as far as the top heel, the lead heel for WCW in '93. Do you think that there was an issue with Flair and him?
Yeah, yeah.
What was it?
There was just bad blood there. I'm not sure what it was.
Why did they have bad blood though?
I'm sure it was, professional, like you said. One's going to pass the belt.
When that happens, does Flair normally get like that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about Luz because it doesn't seem like he's. I know he's political, of course, but it doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy that necessarily gets upset when he has to lose the title.
Well, and he was having problems with the office too. So they were like spanking him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it was more pissed at the office than Rick Rude.
When you look at Rude winning the title, like, do you think that is the direction they should have went, and maybe Flair is a baby face, or do you think Rick Rude top heel, Flair secondary heel? You know what I mean? 1A, 1B, or you think you just like Flair as a baby face at this point?
Flair is a babyface. Rude was, I mean, he got over everywhere he went, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
It is weird though. Rude and Flair, they had good matches, but you would expect if you put those two names on a paper next to each other, you would expect great matches. You know what I mean? But they were
Yeah.
just good, and then sometimes they were okay. So weird, right? I mean, they just didn't have good chemistry for some reason.
Sometimes that's the problem.
Is that a personal thing though? Like as far as them
No,
not being able to get along, or
no,
that doesn't matter?
no. It's like dance contests. Sometimes your partner's good. Sometimes your partner sucks. Sometimes you both suck. You know.
Yep. I just was always kind of, I don't know, fascinated or maybe even thrown off a little bit by the fact that those two didn't have like five-star matches, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like Flair and Sting, unbelievable chemistry. Sting and Rude, unbelievable chemistry. Rude and Chono had unbelievable matches, but for some reason, even Rude carrying Warrior to so many good matches. Rude and Piper. I mean, it just goes on and on and on with Rude, but then all of a sudden it's like, wow, Flair, arguably the greatest of all time, they just didn't mesh.
Yep. Yep. It just didn't happen.
Very, very strange, very weird. Then another random question for you here. How would you book Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart in WCW, other than what you guys did when you kind of had to swerve between them, that they basically had their match, and then basically Bret fakes an injury, Sting comes in, then Bret jumps Sting. So you had a match between them in WCW. I know they had some house show matches, but how would you really book a Hogan versus Bret Hart feud in WCW in their primes there?
Do you remember when Sting was supposed to win that match with Hogan?
Mhm.
I would have had Brett come down and kick Sting and get Sting disqualified. I mean, him kick Hogan and get Sting disqualified. Then you'd have a three-way dance and draw a lot of money that way.
If you were going to have Hogan and Brett one on one, who wins, or do you do a series of matches?
Creative control, but man,
But how would you do it though? Would you want Brett to go over?
he was the hottest thing coming out of the chute, wasn't he?
Yes.
You got to go with the hot hand.
Are you
Like,
trying to say? Are you trying to say Hogan tried to cool him off?
well, well, they used to do handicap matches with the hot boys, right?
Yes. We talked about that before. I guess Hogan never got that out of his head, even though Brett was so hot after the Montreal screw job. I guess he never got that out of his head.
Yes, he didn't.
All things considered, would you put Hogan, Brett at like a Starcade main event, like a Sting Hogan main event? Would that be like your top main event for the year kind of thing? Would that program do that for you?
Sure, sure. Brett's great.
Who's the heel? Who's the babyface?
Hogan, he's the NWO.
Okay, so do that era. You're going heel, Hogan, Brett's the big baby face. He's the hot commodity coming in, and you go that way with it.
Yep.
So interesting that they never really had a big match,
Nope. It was crazy.
right? Isn't that nuts when you think about it?
Yeah.
Then, if you even look at it further, okay, he wrestled Brett, he wrestled Sting, but never a big program with Hogan. And then even SummerSlam '93, they took a picture together, and they were supposed to have a big match, and Hogan's not even on SummerSlam that year.
I know. Crazy.
It's absolutely crazy, like when you think about it. But before we wrap up, I do have to mention this because we are taping today, and I actually forgot to text you this earlier. Happy birthday!
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
How old are you now?
I'm 74.
Oh my God! Can you believe you've made it?
No. That's why I got up early today.
But happy birthday! What are you doing for your birthday?
Probably. I went out to dinner yesterday. I'll probably just enjoy the day with my family.
No other big plans.
No big plans. Hey, at this at this stage, I've had so much good time. I don't want to test fate.
So no extracurricular activities then? Is that what you're
No,
trying to say? No.
exactly.
Those days are over.
Those are over. The
Oh.
past.
As far as the birthday, happy birthday, of course,
Thanks.
and many more, maybe 74 more, maybe.
That would be cool. Thank you.
I just want to mention this as well. I was talking to Father James Mitchell, aka James Vandenberg,
Yeah,
aka the
yeah,
Sinister Minister, and I said to him, because we were talking about the booking of Wrath and Mortis and all that other stuff, and he said, "Hey, when you're in the business, it's much different than when you're outside the business looking in." Like I was saying, like, oh, that's kind of an interesting character. Where does that come from? And he said, "Hey, you got to have a lot of respect for a guy like Kevin Sullivan booking the thing, especially when you're in the business and you're starting to understand why certain things are a certain way." So I said, no, I was like, you can't be giving an excuse for the Dungeon of Doom, and he gave an excuse for the Dungeon of Doom. He said you
yeah.
had to do it. So I couldn't believe that. He stuck up for you big time.
Oh, so you finally realized what I had to do.
I just couldn't believe he was. I thought it was opening the door for him to bury you, and he wouldn't do it. I was like, damn it.
Well, he's a smart guy. Wait, let me ask you this. You know all those guys you saw in the dungeon?
Yep.
Hammer, uh,
Van Hammer. I wish.
the guy with the guitar. I had him for a while.
I wish he was a bigger part of it. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah,
the Shark, the Zodiac.
the Zodiac, the Yeti. Would you like to see them match after match? Or would you let them clump together in one spot?
That is true. You kind of get it out of the way almost. Yeah.
Hello, hello. It's been 25 years later.
That is a good point. I never even thought of it like that. Like, wow, all the Dungeons of Doom are in that one segment, and then it's washed away. Now we get to see, Rey
Yeah,
Mysterio wrestle for a little bit. Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. And guess what they all had in common?
Gimmicks.
They were Hulk's friends.
Oh, of course. Well, of course. Yeah. The
Well,
guys he wanted to work with and he was comfortable with.
yeah, but he had got them in there, right?
Yep.
So, Brutus, I mean, would you have liked to have seen them all in individual matches?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend James,
He's right.
Senior Minister.
He was saying, hey, the ends justify the means. You got to do what you got to do. You got to make Hogan happy, make all his friends happy, get them, like you said, get them all clumped in together, which is nice for the fans. And then get Hogan to turn heel and change the business forever.
Yeah.
Did you
Hopefully.
like, by the way, the Rare Oddities collection that James Vandenberg had? Did you like all that?
Yes, yes. He's a very, very, and I'm not just saying that because he said something nice. He is a very, very talented guy. He is and I don't know why somebody hasn't given him a real good shot. His interviews are great.
Well, he's in the NWA. He's been in the NWA, but obviously, I guess he does his other jobs, his other stuff. So he is technically a part of the NWA.
Oh, great, great.
And he did have a brief spot in AEW. He was the reverend for a wedding between Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian a few years ago.
Oh, I really like him. He's a good guy.
Did you like the Mortal Kombat stuff though? The Glacier, the Mortis, the Wrath.
He blames me for killing Glacier because I said on an interview, Glacier, a slow moving block of ice.
That's true. Yeah. I guess it is your fault technically. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When you look at it though, I know, like you got to have different stuff on the show, but it almost kind of would have been better off if you had the Blood Runs Cold maybe a few years later when the video games really started taking off because
Yeah,
it's very video game esque, very video game centric.
yeah, it is. It was too, you know, too early. That's all.
Okay. You gotta love James Vandenberg though. He said
Yeah,
he got paid a couple years without even working. So thank you,
good,
WCW.
good for him.
So let's hit the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. Kevin, you can follow him on Instagram. What else you got going on in this crazy world?
I'm going to say Salt Lake City next weekend
Wow.
for the show, so I'll be there. So come
Wow,
on.
Salt Lake City. What's going on over there?
There's a convention and some wrestling matches. It's the Big D convention, so I'll be
Wow.
there.
Wow, awesome. Good stuff. I like that. Out and about Salt Lake City. I'm sure you haven't been there in a while.
Been there. I went a couple months ago.
Oh, wow. For
Yeah,
this same promotion or different promotion?
same promotion.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Nice.
Yeah, it runs 4 times a year.
Very cool. Good
Yeah.
stuff.